Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the members of the Legendary Tao Trio, including the Dragon Fire-type Pokémon Reshiram, the Vast White Pokémon, the Dragon Electric-type Pokémon Zekrom, the Deep Black Pokémon, and the Dragon Ice-type Pokémon Kyurem, the Boundary Pokémon. Steeped in both rich mythology and ideology and how to lead a civilization into the future, the members of the Tao Trio are powerful, legendary creatures whose very existence serves as a reflection of the ideals that help societies move forward and become greater than they are at any given time.
Reshiram has the form of a massive dragon covered in soft white fur, with large feet sporting 3 massive long white claws each, with a series of 4 shorter claws in its hands, massive wing-like growth sprouting from the sides of its arms, with a series of fluffy finger-like extensions to the back edges. Its tail takes on the form of a massive turbine-like growth that glows red with fiery energy when the beast powers itself up, with a series of white ring-like growths on its tail and around its neck, the beast's head having a pair of long flowing crests that trail behind it, and further sporting a small fanged mouth, pointed snout, and black eyes with piercing blue sclera. Zekrom, by contrast, has a thick, black, scaly hide for a dragon, with 3 stubby, rounded toes to its 2 feet, and 3 small clawed digits on its hands, with extensions of hide covering its wrists like guards, and a pair of black, semi-ribbed wings that sprout from the back of its black, gem-studded shoulders. Its tail also takes on the form of a large turbine, but with a sleeker, more conical shape to it, and glows bright blue when the creature powers itself up, its head having a pair of shorter black crests that sprout back towards the back of its head, as well as a small craggy mouth with sharp teeth, a blunted snout with a small crest, and grey eyes with piercing red sclera. Kyurem's draconic body is coated in a craggy grey hide, with 3 sharp light grey claws on its 2 feet, and only a pair of smaller claws on its hands, with extremely thin arms, a vaguely turbine-shaped tail, and a long neck with a large craggy mouth and oversized sharp teeth in its lower jaw, its eyes lacking pupils with sclera that glow a bright yellow color like the small gem on its forehead. Large portions of its body, including its malformed wings with twin clear sharp tips on each appendage, are covered in thick uneven layers of ice, including its head, shoulders, belly, and tail, giving it a gruesome and almost undead appearance. When fused into its white Kyurem form, the creature takes on a body form and stance that mimics that of Reshiram a bit more, with white hair covering parts of its tail, upper chest, neck, and head, further sporting large tassel-like growths of hair on its forearms. Its middle toes are now coated in sharp ice along with its knees, shoulders, right arm, and 3 claws, lower jaw, and the right side of its face, finally getting grey eyes still with yellow sclera as the gem on its forehead elongates into a narrow central crest. When fused into its black Kyurem form, on the other hand, the creature takes on a body form and stance that mimics that of Zekrom a bit more, with black hide covering parts of its tail, upper chest, neck, and head, further sporting wings on the back of its shoulders very similar to that of Zekrom. Its middle toes are now coated in sharp ice along with its shoulders, left arm, and hand with 3 claws, lower jaw, left wing, and the front and left side of its face, with grey eyes still with yellow sclera as the gem on its forehead elongates into a narrow central crest.
In stark contrast to most deity-class legendaries, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem have not actually existed for an exceptionally long period of time.
According to Unovan legend, over 2,500 years ago, there is a prosperous civilization known as the People of the Vale, who lived in harmony among an otherwise barren patch of land, referred to as the hometown of the Vale, in the Unova region. Although the land would have normally been barren, the people of the Vale apparently had access to a powerful device called the Sword of the Vale, which, when used in conjunction with a tremendous source of power, could utilize a strange energy weapon known only as the Dragon Force, that effectively turned whatever barren land it hit into fertile land instantly. Although the ancient Unovan kingdom lasted for quite some time, it was eventually torn apart from within. At that time, the power source for the Sword of the Vale was provided by 2 separate sources, a Victini and Kyurem in its original complete form. Shortly after acquiring the Great Dragon to help him, the king became the proud father of 2 sons within a span of only a few years. In their honor, the king used fragments of the rocky body Kyurem had been enclosed within to build many charms, today referred to as the Light and Dark Stones, and distributed them to his highest guards and patrons. Over time, the 2 boys grew up and sought their own ways of ruling, but it was this difference that would ultimately spell the end of the last great Unovan civilization. The exact legend of what happened is still a bit fuzzy and is told in several different versions, but in all likelihood, it is the legend that involved Kyurem as we know it today that is the most important in this analysis. When it came time for a successor to take over the kingdom, the 2 brothers fought vehemently over what route the kingdom should take. The older brother, clothed in white, believed that truth should be the principal force behind their rule, using whatever new technology or idea that came along to better the kingdom and the world in general, regardless of their potentially negative effects. The younger brother, clad in black, instead sought to preserve ideals over all else, believing that the principles that made the kingdom as glorious as it was were to be honored and used to govern it for as long as physically and mentally possible. It is unknown exactly why the ancient dragon took such interest in these 2, but it seems that the notion of truth and ideals were 2 issues that had never considered to be conflicting. Confused about what it should do in the presence of such fury and passion, the ancient dragon went on a rampage, destroying everything in its path before, to the surprise of people then and now, it split in three. Unable to maintain physical and mental stability, the beast split into Reshiram, a living representation of the passion and heat that comes with truth and the advancement of technology and culture, Zekrom, a living representation of the electricity that sparks and fuels the might of ideals and maintains power throughout history even as the rest of the world changes, and Kyurem, the mind and body of the original dragon, left damaged and heavily weakened by the fearsome split. The people of the Vale, the kingdom that once held itself together firmly, was racked in chaos, as the two brothers from their respective deities fought for what seemed like forever while the fission corrupted the energy within the Dragon Force, turning it from an instrument of fertility into an instrument of destruction. With the help of the Victini, the old king managed to fly the ship far away to a place today marked by the city of Aendok, and created artifacts known as the Pillars of Protection to contain the energy of the Dragon Force and deactivate the Sword of the Vale. Unfortunately, when the Sword of the Vale finally landed, the king died from sheer exhaustion, leaving Victini trapped within the barrier generated by the Pillars of Protection. Moreover, in time, the two dragons grew so weary from their fights that they fell into a deep sleep, encapsulated in a special dimension only accessible through the light and dark stones that were originally built in the honor of the two young princes. The two princes realized what they had done was wrong, but could do little more than vanish to parts unknown, leaving two such stones hidden in the bowels of the Sword of the Vale before leaving the kingdom in ruin, never to be seen again. As for Kyurem, it is believed that it left the kingdom shortly after that and traveled back to where it had originally landed, the Giant Chasm, and began living in a small cavern within the surrounding forest land. There it lived in extreme agitation and fury, going so far as to attack any living thing that went near it for sustenance, including the people of Lacunosa town, at night. In response, the citizens of the town built a massive stone wall around the city and forbade people to go out at night. Kyurem stopped feeding on humans after that, and has apparently not repeated the move in recent times, though the citizens of the city still obey these rules even though they claim they no longer believe in such a mythical creature.
While the power of Reshiram is still a little bit of a mystery in terms of mechanics, the actual scope of its power is at least understood to be immense by any standard.
From a mythological standpoint, Reshiram's ability to manipulate fire could be seen as a connection to the fiery passion that keeps truth alive and burning throughout the ages as it pushes through the unknown. The actual reasoning behind this choice of element, however, is more or less connected biologically to Kyurem, the beast from which Reshiram was born. Unlike most fire types, the combustion organs of Reshiram are located completely within its tail and feed throughout its body, allowing it to spew fire equally from either end. When energized, its tail acts much like a jet engine, propelling Reshiram great distances despite the fact that it can't naturally fly. More importantly, the amount of heat given out is actually enough to significantly alter the air temperature of the surrounding atmosphere within several kilometers, effectively altering the weather for days at a time. In battle, Reshiram is able to mix its draconic energy with its fire to produce a dazzling array of dragon and fire-type attacks, one of which is shared by Kyurem, while the other is completely unique to Reshiram. The first attack, referred to by officials as the Fusion Flare attack, is a relatively strong fire-type attack consisting of a huge ball of superheated particles that is brought down forcefully on the opposition before bursting like a bomb. Despite its impressive appearance, the attack only has a single unique attribute, which is completely linked to one of Zekrom and Black Kyurem's signature attacks, Fusion Bolt. If Reshiram or White Kyurem is attacked with a Fusion Bolt before it can attack, it will automatically enter a temporary rage and strike back with far more power than normal, dealing double the normal amount of damage in the process with this move. The mechanics of the attack are strikingly unique because they would make no sense if the legend regarding Reshiram and Zekrom were not true, making it one of the few major deity-based legends that is verified to be historical fact. The second attack comes as a result of Reshiram mixing its standard flames with the draconic flames found among many dragon types. The resulting blast of beautifully bright blue fire, simply known as the Blue Flare attack, is not exceptionally accurate, but is intensely powerful and has a 20% chance of burning anything that survives the attack. Lastly, it is noted that Reshiram, along with White Kyurem, possess a unique ability known as Turbo Blaze that effectively negates any abilities an opponent possesses if they in any way dampen or negate the effectiveness of any of Reshiram's attacks. This means that every single opponent will feel the full brunt of their strength regardless of ability or special powers. This is only further exemplified in its base stats, as the only weakness the creature shows is having a below average base speed stat for a fully evolved dragon type Pokemon, further possessing the highest base special attack stat out of all non-UB fire type Pokemon, and base stat total among all fire type Pokemon in general, tied with Ho-Oh, rendering the creature an ideological force worth fearing in battle.
In a similar way, while the power of Zekrom is still a bit of a mystery in terms of mechanics, the actual scope of its power is also understood to be immense by any standard.
From a mythological standpoint, Zekrom's ability to manipulate electricity could be seen as a connection to the electrifying, life-giving nature of ideals that allows tradition to transfer between generations and exist continuously and constantly even as time passes on and cultures change. The actual reasoning behind this choice of element, however, is more or less connected biologically to Kyurem, the beast from which Zekrom was born. Zekrom's tail is actually a powerful turbine capable of rotating at otherwise impossible speeds, gaining a tremendous amount of kinetic energy in the process. In turn, this kinetic energy is instantly converted into electrical energy due to the unique frictional properties of Zekrom's skin, making the beast a living dynamo of draconic and electrical energy. The immense amount of electricity generated is enough to allow Zekrom to float and even fly via electromagnetic levitation. It is also large enough to induce the formation of massive storm clouds around Zekrom, ensuring that it is constantly enveloped in black lightning-producing clouds. In battle, Zekrom is able to mix draconic energy with electricity to produce a dazzling wave of dragon electric-type attacks, one of which is shared by Black Kyurem, while the other is completely unique to Zekrom. The first attack, referred to by officials as the Fusion Bolt attack, is a relatively strong electric-type attack utilized by Zekrom by electrifying its entire body with the power of a thunderstorm before tackling the opposition head-on. Despite its impressive appearance, the attack only has a single unique attribute, which is completely linked to one of Reshiram and White Kyurem's signature attacks, Fusion Flare. If Zekrom or Black Kyurem is attacked with Fusion Flare before it can attack with Fusion Bolt, it will automatically enter a temporary rage and strike with even greater force than before, dealing double the normal amount of damage in the process. As noted with Reshiram, the mechanics of the attack are strikingly unique because they would make no sense if the legend regarding Zekrom and Reshiram was not true, making it one of the few major deity-based legends that is verified to be historical fact. The second attack is referred to as the Bolt Strike attack, and simply involves Zekrom energizing its body's surface with an unimaginably large amount of electricity before charging into an opponent forcefully. While the attack isn't exceptionally accurate, it's immensely powerful and has a 20% chance of paralyzing anything that survives the attack. Lastly, it's noted that Zekrom, along with Black Kyurem, possesses a unique ability known as Terravolt that effectively negates any abilities an opponent possesses if they in any way dampen or negate the effectiveness of any of Zekrom's attacks. This means that every single opponent will feel the full brunt of its strength regardless of ability or special powers. This is only further exemplified in its base stats, as the only weakness the creature shows is having a below average base speed stat for fully evolved electric and dragon type Pokemon, further possessing the highest base attack stat and base stat total out of all electric type Pokemon, rendering the creature an ideological force worth fearing in battle.
In the recent past, two events involving both Reshiram and Zekrom have occurred, the earlier of the two being the Sword of the Vale incident from 12 years ago.
While the legend of the people of the Vale was known by the ancestors and therefore many people that prospered in Aendok for some time, no one ever dared to try and revitalize the Sword of the Vale. That is, until a man named Damon took one of the Dragon Stones to use it to not only summon one of the legendary dragons, official reports are unable to indicate which one, but eventually capture the same Victini that had helped the old king so many years ago, torturing it into reactivating the Sword of the Vale and the Dragon Force. Although efforts were made by Damon's family to stop him, he refused to let them interfere. To him, the most important thing he had to live for was restoring the hometown of the Valley to its former glory. A young boy and his friends managed to board the Sword of the Vale before it got off the ground, but they too were unsuccessful in stopping Damon. It was only after the young boy was knocked unconscious that Victini used his dream imaging ability to reveal that if the Sword of the Vale was ever moved from its current position, which it already had been, the Dragon Force would once again become corrupted because Reshiram and Zekrom, who in a sense served as a source of influence on the device, fell into their stasis before the Dragon Force was corrupted and thus did not know what effects their presence would have. After revealing the location of the second hidden Dragon Stone, the young boy managed to make it to the bottom of the Sword of the Vale and successfully reawaken the other legendary dragon, resulting in a fierce conflict between the two dragons that eventually drove the Sword of the Vale into chaos. The efforts made by both dragons after realizing their mistake and the boarded trainers to not only stop the Dragon Force, but destroy the thing keeping it from being stopped, the Pillars of Protection, eventually drove the entire structure to rocket upward into the coldest reaches of the atmosphere. While almost everyone was able to make it out safely, the young boy stayed behind in order to rescue the Victini that was still sealed within the inner mechanisms of the Sword of the Vale. The boy would then have perished if Victini had not used his most powerful move, the V-Crate attack, to shatter the ice encroaching upon the Sword of the Vale and destroy the Pillars of Protection, allowing them all to escape to the planet's surface. It is reported that Damon realized the error of his ways and managed to turn over a new leaf, leading the remaining people of the Vale to begin reconstructing the hometown of the Valley with more traditional methods. At this moment, the operation is still being conducted and is showing some considerable progress. A more recent incident, though only by a few months, is far more infamous and represents perhaps the only case of a major criminal organization technically succeeding at their goal, the First Plasma Crisis. Unlike other criminal organizations, Team Plasma was unique in that it was governed by a gang of 7 major officials, or sages as they call themselves, and a young man known only as N. Gidses, N's adopted father and head sage of the organization, raised N with Pokemon that had been injured and hurt by humans, teaching him that trainers were oppressive people that were hurting Pokemon and deserved to be punished. With that knowledge, N began a career attempting to not only bond with as many wild Pokemon as he could, but also conveying his message of peace between people and Pokemon, trying to convince others, which he did surprisingly well, that they were hurting the Pokemon they owned by keeping them around. In order to cement his opinion and ensure that harmony was established permanently between people and Pokemon, N went so far as to locate a Dragon Stone and awaken one of the legendary Dragon Pokemon. Due to Plasma's manipulation of the media during the time, however, it is unknown which one he actually awakened. After this, he and the rest of Team Plasma revealed that the secret headquarters, the place where all their plans had been laid out, was hidden right beneath the Unova Pokemon League, much to the surprise of the world, the Elite Four, and especially the Unova champion, Alder. Thankfully, a young trainer was able to locate another Dragon Stone and resurrect the other Dragon Pokemon which, after an intense battle, bonded with the trainer and assisted in defeating N. It was only then that Ghetsis revealed that he, and not N, was the true leader of Team Plasma, and had brainwashed his adopted son into thinking so poorly towards trainers just so he can make N the figurehead king of the Unova region, while Ghetsis ultimately ruled the region in the shadows. After a fierce battle, however, the young trainer defeated Ghetsis and effectively halted Team Plasma's efforts. Ghetsis' elite guard, the Shadow Triad, were able to smuggle him out of the Unova region before he can be arrested, leaving his current whereabouts unknown at the time. After a bit of searching though, the other 6 sages were located and arrested for their crimes. N managed to escape as well, and played his own part in the second plasma crisis that would follow 2 years later, but as of now, no real efforts have been made to locate him. In truth, he was just as much of a victim as anyone else. Regardless, the effects of the entire incident have proven to be quite drastic on the people of Unova, as there are still many people who refuse to let go of N's words, and still firmly believe that trainers are hurting their Pokemon by keeping them contained or leashed to the side, in both a physical and metaphorical context.
Although there has been speculation about its origins in the past, today it has been scientifically established that much like Pokemon like Deoxys, Kyurem is an extraterrestrial life form.
From what can be told about its history, Kyurem arrived on planet Earth encased in an icy piece of rock, possibly a fragment from an asteroid or perhaps a self-generated cocoon, had managed to survive the impact by some means, testifying to its incredible fortitude and bodily strength. Oddly enough, the day it arrived in the middle of the Unova region over 2500 years ago, in a place now appropriately named the Giant Chasm, created when the impacting body struck and dug out a large portion of the forest land, the last great king of the ancient Unova Empire was in the immediate area and witnessed the impact himself. Afterwards, he directed his men to follow him to the impact site, where he first laid eyes on a giant beast so powerful and majestic that nearly all of his personal guards fled upon seeing it. Although dazed and confused, this monster proved to be more than a bit intelligent, as apparently spoke to the king through telepathy, a unique ability that most dragon types cannot possess in any shape or form. While his servants cowered in the face of the beast, the king showed no fear and boldly walked straight up to the beast. Using his own thoughts to speak to Kyurem, the two apparently reached an accord of some sort, though what was actually said can only be imagined today, for that same day the king found what would be the greatest protector of the ancient Unova region. This alien beast helped the king conquer and establish peaceful dominion over the entire region and most of North America, and in the process, the two of them became the best of friends and true equals, more so than most humans today could imagine. Coupled with the Victini that served as a playful pet and loyal friend of the king, this great dragon became a major part of the continent and helped shape the Unova region into the finest kingdom to ever be made, though the unfortunate resultant history of this has also been explored previously.
Studies have been conducted in an effort to understand the anatomy of Kyurem, and what it actually is has left more questions than answers in almost every sense imaginable. But even so, what little is known more than demonstrates just how unusual life can be out in the cosmos.
Unlike most mammalian life forms, Kyurem is unique in that its brain actually contains 4 separate lobes. Like humans, the main part of its brain consists of 2 halves that control both the cognitive functions of its body and the capacity to demonstrate abstract thought and ideas and interpret the world around it. The other 2 lobes, however, are completely different in that they are linked only to the creative lobe of the beast's brain and each have an unusual function. At the moment, both these extra lobes are deactivated, but scans indicate that one lobe is apparently used for advanced temperature regulation, which may explain why it was able to stay alive even in the coldest reaches of space, and may have once enabled Kyurem to raise his body temperature to such high degrees that it could possibly wield fire-type attacks to great effectiveness. The other lobe, as one might guess, was a bioelectric regulator that can use the natural electrical energy within the beast's body to generate massive bursts of electricity capable of severely damaging anything that got too close to it. Both of these lobes are directly connected to the portion of the brain that, in humans, is associated with primary emotional control. This leaves open a shocking possibility, or, as some would call it, an almost definite reality. These 2 lobes are deactivated today because they are the source of Reshiram and Zekrom's power. This would suggest the occurrence of an extraordinarily rare event known as a super-cerebral psychokinetic split. In short, in order to maintain control of the rest of the creature's body and ensure that its brain did not fry itself and the body at the same time, a trigger from the beast's brainstem forced Kyurem to psychokinetically split its elemental powers and mass into 3 different units, a mutation so rare that the number of known cases throughout all of history can be counted on a single human hand. Currently, there is little that can be said otherwise on the subject, as the obvious rarity of the event has made it impossible to scientifically understand the process in Earth-based life forms, let alone in a life form from a completely different planet.
While many ice types are able to generate impressively low temperatures naturally, in its base form, Kyurem takes the cake in this action and is able to do things that are never thought before to be biologically possible, let alone physically.
In a sense, Kyurem's anatomy is very similar to what is seen in other dragons, with a basic system of heart, lungs, tissue, fat, and other organs, though their forms and shapes are remarkably different from what one could see in an Earth life form. Strangely enough, however, much of Kyurem's body space is taken up not by muscle or fat, but an advanced gas cycling organ array that essentially acts as a giant cryo-cooler, cycling gases over repeated cycles to gradually lower its internal body temperature and enable Kyurem to utilize ice-type attacks with great effectiveness. Unlike other life forms that have existed, however, the beast is also able to cycle its internal gases so well that, in a few occasions, it has been proven to be capable of actually reaching absolute zero, if only for a few splitters of time at the most. It is still a bit of a mystery as to how Kyurem is actually able to maintain its physical form upon reaching such an extreme temperature, but it seems quite likely that the culprit is unique organic coating on every single inch of its organs, skin, and muscle tissue that acts as an intense layer of insulation that protects it from freezing internally. This is not necessarily the case on the outside, however, as Kyurem's repeated usage of its moves has resulted in the formation of thick, uneven sheets of ice building up on its head, neck, and wings. While Kyurem might not have the sheer destructive power of its children, it does have its own signature attack that is more than a marvel to scientists. Among most species of Pokemon, the Icy Wind attack is a cheap but nonetheless effective way of damaging the opposition and reducing its overall mobility. Due to the way it generates freezing temperatures, however, Kyurem does one better in that it can convert an otherwise weak Icy Wind attack into a more intense version that has the same effects with greater power. This attack, recognized as the Glaciate attack, involves Kyurem generating and quickly releasing a burst of air super cool to absolute zero from its mouth. While the attack quickly warms up upon leaving the body, by the time it reaches its intended target, it is still cold enough to instantly flash freeze it, dealing decent damage in the process. This move would not be so dangerous if it were not for the fact that it has the same spreading power as the Icy Wind attack, and therefore can strike multiple targets at once, eventually leaving them defenseless and open to attack or, in the case of most wild encounters, unable to get away before they are devoured alive by this monstrous beast. Outside of this, as far as stats are concerned, while it may not have the raw offensive power that Reshiram and Zekrom have, it still serves as a fair balance between the two, with only its base special defense stat being below average for a fully evolved Dragon-type Pokemon, and its base defense stat below average for a fully evolved Ice and Dragon-type Pokemon, so it can more than hold its own in a confrontation.
Even by legendary standards, Kyurem's origins and current powers are more than impressive, but this beast has one other trick up its sleeve that only makes it that much more fascinating and dangerous to be around.
For most of its life on Earth, this beast has been stuck in its current form and is unable to regain any of the power it lost when Reshiram and Zekrom split from it. Recent advances in genetics, mainly coming from the results of the Mewtwo project, however, have revealed that Kyurem can in fact at least partially regain its power. Because Reshiram and Zekrom are essentially part of Kyurem in a very direct sense, it came as no surprise that their DNA is nearly identical in all three cases. The only thing that is different is what genes are active and inactive. Because of this, Kyurem could hypothetically fuse with one or even both of them and not undergo any radical genetic mutation. In an attempt to do just this, an anonymous research group, with help from Drayden, the head expert in the Unova region on the Dragon type, created what are now referred to as the DNA splicers. These unique items are laced with a special lab-grown species of bacteria that is able to reproduce indefinitely for as long as it wishes by only feeding on water vapor and oxygen in the air. Moreover, they are attracted to cold temperatures and thrive in such conditions, making Kyurem a perfect host for them. These creatures, however, are not harmless, as has been proven that they will directly move through the bloodstream of this frozen beast and head straight for the brain, where they begin feeding on the water content in the tissue on the inside of its skull cavity, which thankfully does not harm the beast's brain. When this occurs, it stimulates Kyurem's mind and temporarily activates one of the disabled brain lobes in its head, a process that can likewise be reversed simply by removing the DNA splices from the beast. This is important because, as was postulated when it was first made, it means that Kyurem can potentially recreate a psychokinetic link with one of its components and, barring any accidental or radical mutation, can absorb them and regain part of its lost power through the process known as Absofusion. During this process, Reshiram and Zekrom are reduced to a respective light or dark stone before being completely absorbed by Kyurem through the organic energy conduit stored in his wings. Immediately afterwards, the beast's body begins to glow brightly, almost as if undergoing evolution, and it changes its form drastically, taking on a form similar in terms of body size and shape to the beast it fused with. However, because the DNA splices were not fully completed before the project was cancelled due to fears what Kyurem might do to humans in the region if fully restored, given what it had gone through because of us, Kyurem cannot fuse with both at the same time. Moreover, the creature's fused forms referred to as White Kyurem and Black Kyurem are still horribly grotesque and show much more of Kyurem's influence than they do of the absorbed beast. Kyurem retains EV, IV, and level value during this transformation, but its defensive-based stats increase slightly and its offensive-based stats change dramatically and increase far beyond what even Reshiram and Zekrom have on their own, with the exception of the minor offensive stat from either subject, which is slightly reduced. Moreover, this mutation brings with it some bizarre and devastating consequences. For one thing, in its fused form, Kyurem inherits the ability of the beast it fused with. Secondly, it loses the ability to utilize its scary face technique, instead learning either Fusion Flare or Fusion Bolt depending upon the fused form. Lastly, most importantly though, this transformation disables Kyurem's ability to utilize his Glaciate attack, but replaces it with something far more dangerous, activated when the energy conduits in the beast's wings extend into the turbine-like structure of its tail, referred to as Overdrive Mode. These two attacks are only accessible to Kyurem due to regaining part of its lost power, and although speculation might say otherwise to some, it is likely that both these moves were available to the beast when it was in its original form. It is also noted that although they can both utilize power from either Reshiram or Zekrom, the type assignment of them and their overall effects are altered from normal, since Kyurem's two lobes still cause its icy powers to be more dominant than any it acquires in fusion, making them both ice-type attacks. In the case of Ice Burn, White Kyurem uses its power to generate a vicious whirlwind of super cold air around its body before, after a brief charging time, launching the Wicked Blast of Air at its target. Because the attack involves the cycling of cold gases outside the body from an internal power source, the overall temperature of the attack is much lower than that of a Glaciate attack, and thus does a great deal more damage. Moreover, because the attack is based off Reshiram's powers, it has a decent chance of actually burning any target that somehow manages to survive the attack. In the other case, the Freeze Shock attack involves Black Kyurem generating a ball of super cold ice and charging it with vast amounts of electricity. After a brief charging time, Kyurem fires the icy projectile at its target, dealing incredible physical damage to the process and potentially paralyzing anything that survives the impact, due to its reliance on Zekrom's power to operate. Both of these forms, as well as Kyurem's forms in general, effectively make it one of the most powerful Pokémon to ever exist, only held back by its still incomplete state. As far as its stats go, as White Kyurem, the beast only has a below average base defense stat as a fully evolved Ice and Dragon type Pokémon, and as Black Kyurem, it only has a below average base special defense stat for a fully evolved Dragon type Pokémon, overall possessing the highest base attack as Black Kyurem and special attack stats as White Kyurem, as well as base stat total out of all Ice type Pokémon and the former 2 out of all Dragon type Pokémon and either of its Absofusion forms. Regardless of whether it's partially complete states, or even something that should exist with their unnatural forms, there is no doubt that this immense power can make Kyurem a terrible source of raw fury and total destruction if it is allowed to assume this level of heightened power under any circumstances.
Kyurem has a tendency to keep to itself most of the time and is rarely ever seen in the public eye, but there are 2 important instances where this is not the case.
The first and perhaps more infamous case was the second Plasma Crisis that took place 10 years ago. In the conclusion of the first Plasma Crisis, the members of Team Plasma split into 2 factions. One side realized the harm of its actions and took sides with the end, believing that Pokemon and people were meant to live together in peace with no feuding or fighting. The more dominant half, however, chose to follow the orders of Gitses and forged a new identity, taking on a new appearance and swearing to take over the Unova region at all costs. Although Gitses was eager to unleash his wrath upon the world, he had to keep everything relatively low-key until the moment was right. In order to accomplish this, he assigned a prominent researcher named Kolrez as the new head of Team Plasma. Kolrez was not exactly the type of person one might otherwise associate with Plasma, but their ambitions followed alongside his research on the potential of Pokemon in and outside of human contact, so he went along with the mission. Even so, Gitses made sure that his personal guards to Shadow Triad kept Kolrez in check and along schedule. With the latest technology, Gitses enlisted Kolrez in the construction of the Plasma Frigate, a massive warship capable of traversing both air and sea and armed with a devastating cannon that could focus energy into a concentrated laser powerful enough to almost level anything it touched. Seeking to entomb the region in the world as cold as he was, Gitses did his research on the region and realized the potential that Kyurem had with the DNA splicers. In turn, he used his advanced technology to capture and control Kyurem using a high-frequency radio system embedded into the walking cane he was forced to use due to failing health at the conclusion of the first Plasma Crisis. With Kyurem under his control and as a viable power source, Gitses used the Plasma Frigate to freeze half the region and eventually Opelucid City, stealing the DNA splices from Drayden in the process. However, a young trainer by some miracle of the world managed to sneak aboard the Plasma Frigate and defeated Kolrez, after which Kolrez found the inspiration to finish his work. With that done, the man shed all ties to Gitses and proclaimed a new beginning for Team Plasma without any of Gitses' influence. Angered beyond control, Gitses abandoned the frigate in the middle of the giant chasm and sought refuge in the small caravan he had originally captured Kyurem in. While the young trainer pursued Gitses in the hopes of stopping him, Gitses pulled a wild card out and tried to have Kyurem freeze the innocent trainer solid. The timely intervention of N saved the young trainer's life, however, but Gitses shocked both of them when the legendary dragon under N's possession, whose identity is still uncertain, was reduced back to its stone form and absorbed by Kyurem with the DNA splicers, transforming it into a monstrous new form with more power than ever before. Even this was not enough to win the day, however, as the young trainer managed to prevail and defeat the beast in battle. Outraged beyond the point of exhaustion, Gitses attacked the trainer in a mad fury for ruining his plans, but just as before, his temper got the best of him and resulted in his ultimate downfall. Kyurem had escaped deep into the giant chasm's caverns after the incident, and while Gaetus was able to make it out safely due to the intervention of the Shadow Triad, it seems that this was his last hurrah and the ultimate end of any organization under his control. As of now, Kolres has no plans for world domination and is instead taking his Team Plus members down a path similar to that taken by those under the leadership of N. With that said, it is likely this incident will too be forgotten with time, though some, particularly Kyurem, may never forget it. The second and more mysterious event in question is the Roshan City incident, which took place just a few months after the above event, and of which there are a few details due to the general isolation of the incident. According to witness reports, this event involved the interaction of a Keldeo with Kyurem in a place known by locals as Full Court, an abandoned mineshaft that is occasionally used by Kyurem as a place of refuge. Here, a Keldeo, looking to prove to its friends, namely Cobalion, Verizon, and Terrakion, that it was worthy of being an equal to them, or a sort of justice as some might say, challenged Kyurem openly to a battle. Although it was determined that Keldeo was not afraid to challenge Kyurem, it soon found itself outmatched even to the point where Kyurem broke the poor creature's horn off. The three legendary Pokémon attempted to rescue Keldeo, but in anger, Kyurem managed to muster enough strength to turn into White Kyurem and, during that brief moment in time, froze the three beasts solid with its Ice Burn attack. The Keldeo ran away hurt and defeated, but Kyurem pursued it, wishing to finish the battle at all costs. This led it to attack Roshan City and left the area as little more than a frozen wasteland by the middle of the night. With the assistance of some traveling trainers, however, Keldeo was able to return to Full Court and battle Kyurem. Learning from its mistake in challenging Kyurem, Keldeo managed to unlock the power of its resolute form and in turn unlock the secret sword attack. Though it ended up losing the battle in the end, Kyurem retreated out of respect, and Keldeo, alongside his three friends, who had been accidentally freed during the last fight, were able to leave together, with Keldeo finally being accepted as a true sword of justice. Further details are hard to obtain due to the isolation of the event, but it's unlikely that any further ramifications will come from this incident, although Full Court has now been frozen into an ice castle in order to prevent its total collapse, as it nearly occurred during the fight between Kyurem and Keldeo.
You know, it's kind of interesting for me to really see how the idea of truth and ideals could be seen as opposing forces when they are meant to work together, and that sort of becomes a little more relevant when you see what these beasts can do both apart and together. Reshiram, the living embodiment of truth, may be a creature that sees light only in the presence of advancement and evolution, but that is usually not enough to really keep a society peaceful and intact. Nonetheless, it is a fearsome creature with incredible fiery power to it and can really incinerate all that oppose it with majestic flames, unlike that created by any other fire-type Pokémon. On the other hand, Zekrom, the living embodiment of ideals, might be a creature that sees light only in the presence of respect for the past and honor for the traditions of old, but that too is usually not enough to keep a society peaceful and united. Even so, its command over electricity, especially given it's a physical brawler, makes it stand out from other beasts with immense electrical power that can electrocute anything to dust that gets in its way. Of the three here, though, I genuinely feel bad for Kyurem, as it never asked for the fate that has befallen it, and should not be forgotten by anyone, even if it is separated from its counterparts. Its normally frozen form is a literal shell of its former self, and it really shows, but its capacity to actually refuse, at least partially, with its components also hints at the immense destructive power it is capable of, through ice or any of the means provided to it with Absofusion. I have my doubts that Kyurem will likely ever be seen to assume its complete original form again in modern times, but if it does ever come to pass, we shall likely all hope that it doesn't prove to be vengeful towards humanity for causing its split in the first place.
Impressive and dominating in their appearances, and with the power of ideology setting the tone for their existence, the members of the Tao Trio are truly legendary beasts that have the depths of the human mind to thank for their current existence, for better or for worse. The chances of ever seeing them in person might be incredibly slim, but for those lucky enough to acquire a lighter Darkstone, or unlucky enough to wander into Kyurem's den, they are a brilliant sight to behold and more than worth respecting in turn.
Just do yourself a favor and make sure to have an idea of what truly matters more to you, truth or ideals, before squaring up against them, or the freakish matter of their existence might prove to be the least of your problems when they challenge your ideology directly to the application of their unbridled might.
Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.